The neighbor's routine. I live in a quiet suburban neighborhood, the kind where everyone keeps their lawn meticulously trimmed and waved politely when you pass. For the most part, it's peaceful, almost boring. But there's this one neighbor, Mr. Henderson, who lives across the street. He's an older guy, keeps to himself. At first, I didn't pay him much attention, but then I started noticing his routine. It's incredibly precise. Every morning at 7:15, he walks to his mailbox. Not a minute earlier, not a minute later. He retrieves his mail, nods to anyone who happens to be outside, and goes back inside. Then, every evening at 9 sharp, he turns on his porch light. And at 9:17, he turns it off. Not 9:16, not 9:18, always 9:17. It's those little details that started to get to me. The sheer rigidity of his schedule. It's like he's operating on some kind of internal clock, or like he's being controlled. One day I was working from home, and I happened to glance out the window. It was around 2 in the afternoon, and Mr. Henderson was outside in his backyard. He was standing perfectly still, facing his house, just standing there. I watched him for a few minutes, but he didn't move. It was unsettling, like he was frozen in time. Then, just as suddenly, he turned and went back inside. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I kept looking out my window, watching his house. At 9 o'clock, his porch light came on, and at 9:17, it went off. But then, a few minutes later, it came back on, and then off again, and then on again. It was flickering erratically. I felt a surge of adrenaline. Something was wrong. I grabbed my phone and went outside. As I crossed the street, I could hear a faint sound coming from his house, a rhythmic tapping. I approached his front door and the tapping got louder. I peered through the window and what I saw made my blood run cold. Mr. Henderson was sitting in his living room, facing the window. He was completely still, except for his right hand, which was tapping repetitively on the armrest of his chair. Tap, tap, tap. His eyes were wide open, staring straight ahead, but they looked empty, lifeless. I backed away slowly, my heart pounding. I didn't know what to do. I wanted to call the police, but I hesitated. What could I tell them? My neighbor is acting weird? I went back home, locked my doors, and closed my blinds. I didn't sleep that night. The tapping sound, the image of his empty eyes, it was burned into my mind. The next morning, Mr. Henderson was outside, retrieving his mail right on schedule. He nodded to me as if nothing had happened. And since then, his routine has been perfect. Every day, every minute, the same. And that is what is the most frightening, the return to normalcy.